like a Hellcat.
Hello and welcome back to the channel, where this week it's time for a Sony PlayStation review with a game that many people aren't even aware exists. I am talking about Snowboard Kids Plus, which saw release in January of 1999, and it is the PlayStation version of the Nintendo 64 game Snowboard Kids. Now I have to be honest, because I had no idea this game existed myself until very recently, and as soon as I found that out, I knew I had to play it. I knew I was going to cover it on the channel because of course I want to talk about how it compares to the original N64 game Snowboard Kids, and of course what it performs like on its own merit as well in terms of its look, sound, gameplay, content and lifespan, of course whether it's still actually worth playing today, and of course where it will feature in our slowly expanding PlayStation Top 10. I do need to point out that most of the game is in Japanese, so that may well put some people off, but if you've played the N64 original, I would have absolute faith in you being able to navigate your way through this game. Once you hit the main menu, you've got Start Game, you've got Lesson, and you've got Options. Once you head into Options, it's the same settings that you can change as the N64 games, turning on the item boxes and the coins in multiplayer, but more importantly, you can also turn off or on the autopilot feature, for when you pass the checkpoint line, the game will automatically guide you into the elevator for the next lap. You can head into lessons if you want to, but the downside is it's all in Japanese, so you won't have any idea at all what is being told to you or what you have to do. But the likelihood is you're not even going to go into this anyway, because a lot of people who be playing this game will have been people who played the original N64 game and will have a very good idea how to play the game anyway. So once you hit the character selection screen in this, you'll see there are 8 characters to pick from to start with: Slash, Nancy, Jam, Linda, Tommy, Ruby, Nicole and Pamela, and also 2 additional characters that you can unlock: Cade and also Shinobin from the original game.
Ready? Go!
As always, I'm going to start with visuals first, and there are 2 things that you will instantly notice about the PlayStation version of Snowboard Kids. The first is the fact the game is in a higher resolution, which means everything is much clearer and sharper than the Nintendo 64 game. It makes everything much easier to see as well, but there is a massive downside to this, and this is the fact that the game suffers from massive slowdown when there are more than one character on screen. It is so noticeable. It's something that you cannot avoid noticing when you play the game, and it really does bring the game down a notch, because this was not on the N64 game. It's only here on the PlayStation version, and it is very disappointing. Once you get out in front ahead of all the other people, the game resumes its normal standard pace, which is fine, and it runs absolutely fine when you're the only character on screen. It is just so frustrating that the game slows down massively when there are other characters on the screen. Of course, when you're playing 2-player mode as well, the slowdown is permanent for the whole entire race, and it's for that reason I would not recommend this game as a multiplayer experience. You're much better off sticking with the Nintendo 64 version in that regard. Now, there have been a few graphical tweaks, because the effects that come off your snowboard as you're going through the snow are actually much nicer on the PlayStation version, and when you use the fan item, you'll see the air blowing is much more impressive than the Nintendo 64 version. But of course there are more downsides as well. The PlayStation version is much glitchier. You'll see screen tearing here and there throughout the game, and the pop-up is far more noticeable on the PlayStation, with big chunks of scenery just popping into view. The Nintendo 64 version had a sort of peeling effect, so it wasn't quite as noticeable. So I feel in that regard the PlayStation version is actually slightly worse. Thankfully, the menu presentation is just as nice, if not nicer, than the original N64 version, and the character selection screen is actually much better as well. But when you come away from it in the grand scheme of things, you will be thinking about one thing only, and that is the disappointing performance. So moving on to sound effects and music, and thankfully it's pretty much all positive stuff here because Snowboard Kids Plus sounds fantastic just like the original N64 game did. We've still got the same fantastic tunes from that game, although they have been slightly tweaked and altered. It will really be a case of which ones you prefer personally. They do sound very, very similar though, and they are still fantastic. Sound effects within the game as well are still quality as well. Yes, there are some Japanese voices in this game, although I don't really think that bothers me whatsoever in all fairness, because the game's still enjoyable to play in all fairness. So what I will do is give you some examples of the music within Snowboard Kids Plus. So moving on to the gameplay next, and for the most part it plays pretty much the same as the Nintendo 64 original. You move your character with the D-pad or the analog stick, you hold the X button to jump, holding down a direction whilst you're holding the jump button will perform one of the preset spins or flips. The R and L buttons do your grabs on this game, and you fire your red items with the square button and the blue items with the circle button. All of that is pretty much the same. You collect coins in the same way by performing tricks. The characters have got their special moves as well, where you input various D-pad commands to do their unique moves, and you can collect coins on the track as well. All of that is exactly the same as the N64 game, but where this differs from Snowboard Kids is the fact that the tight cornering mechanic, where you're holding diagonal down, is much more responsive on the PlayStation. You're able to take corners much easier, and what that does is make the game slightly easier to play and actually less frustrating in the long run, because when you get to the harder courses you're actually going to have more success on them on the PlayStation version, because you're able to use alpine boards much more effectively on this game than you can on the Nintendo 64. Some characters with alpine boards simply could not take certain corners on the N64 game, whereas on Snowboard Kids Plus you will have much more success in that regard. In fact, you can probably play every single race with an alpine board, meaning it's just actually slightly easier to play because it's more responsive in the turning mechanic, and you're using a faster board. It is just simply easier to play. And another thing about the gameplay is there is no spike in difficulty through the courses on the PlayStation version. It maintains the same level from start to finish, which is something I actually prefer over the N64 game. When you hit Quicksand Valley on the N64 game, the CPU gets statistical boosts and their characters can just go faster than you, even if they're slower, and it feels like they're cheating in all fairness. That isn't evident in the PlayStation version, and it makes the PlayStation version a better playing game, certainly from a one-player perspective anyway, because you don't feel like they're ganging up on you. You don't feel like items are being used exclusively on you. So in gameplay, it's a fantastic playing game. It really is, and it improves on the N64 original. The only thing, of course, is the minor slowdown, which affects the gameplay a little bit, not too much, because once you get used to it, it's fine and you can adapt. But overall, Snowboard Kids Plus is a very good playing snowboarding game.
Great!
So moving on to content and lifespan next, and Snowboard Kids Plus has had a fair bit added to it over the original version of Snowboard Kids on the N64. We've got storyline sequences and we've got endings for all of the characters. The downside being though that the writing is all in Japanese, so you probably won't have any idea what's being said, but thankfully much more is on offer as well. Because we've got 10 characters and now the characters have got individual record cards, you can complete the game fully with all 10 characters, which means it has much more replay value as a one-player game over the N64 original. We've also got additional costumes on this game that can be purchased within the shop as well, so there's incentive to keep playing it so that you can buy every single costume for all of the characters. We've got the same bonus boards on offer from the N64 game. We've got 9 courses and we've got the same skill games and time attack mode as well, but the fact that you can complete the game fully 10 times means the one-player experience is so much more than it was on the N64 game, and it's a massive plus point. The downside is the multiplayer is nowhere near as good because it runs so much worse than the N64 game, and it's only 2-player instead of the 4-player from the N64 game. You're not going to get anywhere near the same lifespan in this regard. As always, that leaves me with my 2 final questions. Is Snowboard Kids Plus still worth playing today? And where does it feature in our slowly expanding PlayStation Top 10? Now, without a doubt, this game is still worth playing, whether you're a fan of snowboarding games or PlayStation games in general, or if you played the original Snowboard Kids on the N64, this is well worth playing and you will thoroughly enjoy it, regardless of the fact it does have slowdown and some graphical imperfections in places. It's still thoroughly enjoyable and it has much more lifespan over the N64 original. In terms of where does it rank with the other PlayStation games that I've looked at so far, it's coming in at number 2. It's a very good game. It's not as good as Pro Evolution Soccer, which is still number 1, but I actually feel it's even better than WWF SmackDown in the long run. It is just a thoroughly enjoyable game in my opinion, and it's coming in at number 2. Now, like always, these are just my thoughts and my thoughts alone. If you agree with me, let me know why. If you disagree as well, let me know why. I'm always interested in hearing other people's views. If you haven't done so, consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, share the video, all of that stuff if you want to, and also consider becoming a channel member if you want to be in with the chance of winning a brand new game every month. Like always, I'll be back in the near future with another video. Goodbye for now.